Okay, everybody, we are back and probably going to be talking about the largest of the issues that is facing the Middle East today, and that would be the Arab-Israeli conflict. And it's long, it's convoluted. I'm going to try to break it down for you, but we need to understand this to understand how this region works. And per request, I got away from the red, and we're going to go with the purple background, because I like purple. Okay, so we have a little bit of a definition here, if you will. So, what the Arab-Israeli conflict is the struggle between Arabic Muslim nations and Israel, okay, which is also a Jewish nation, which is going to be important as we talk about things moving on. And the conflict is based on a variety of different things from religion to economics and control of the land within Israel as well. And anytime you add in land and religion, I mean, these are two things that are fought over fairly often. So we really need to get down to it. But if you just kind of want to break it all down, this is where we're at. And the land that we're talking about here is Israel. And if you look at this, you have the red is modern day Israel. These areas over here, if you follow the mouse, Gaza and the West Bank, that's something that we're going to be talking about, how those are there. And there are two major groups of people that live in this area. You have the Israelis that primarily live here, and some in here that we'll talk about. And the Israelis, of course, are the Jewish inhabitants of the area. And then you have the Palestinians. Okay, this is important to understand because I'm going to talk about Palestinians a lot. The Palestinians are the Arabic Muslims who live in this area. They primarily live in Gaza and the West Bank, but they have lots of allies around them. So again, the Israelis are the Jewish inhabitants of Israel, and then you have Gaza and the West Bank. Those would be the Palestinian Muslims. Now, this area has two very, very large claims on it. So let's talk about the oldest of these claims, the Jewish land claims. Of course, this area was founded under Abraham, as you see the gentleman on the left over here with his wife Sarah and son Isaac. According to both scripture as well as historical evidence as well, Abraham did create Israel, if you will. He first got the first people there. And that was probably around, 3,500, 4,000 years ago. So the claims are very old. Of course, as we remember, the Jews left Israel for a while, went down to Egypt, got stuck in Egypt, and then, of course, our friend over here on the right, Moses, brought them back and was able to help them get reestablished in Israel. Then you had the great kingdom of Israel created by David and then his son Solomon, and everything was going well. But then around 2,500 years ago, they were attacked by the Babylonians and the area was weakened. And from that point, the Jews don't really run their own country, but they're given opportunities under groups like the Persians and Alexander, and that you don't really have to worry about. But eventually they would fall under Roman control. And the Romans basically tried to get them to worship their gods. The Jews would not. The Jews rebelled, so the Romans crushed them. And in the year 70, the Romans came in, they sacked the city, they destroyed the temples. This is actually a famous painting of, you see people being thrown over the sides, people are dead in the streets, you have menorahs and other things being taken, just absolute destruction. And so around 2,000 years ago, the Jewish population was kicked out of Israel. And then that area was under control of the Romans and a group called the Byzantines. But then you have the next land claim, and that would be by the Muslims. In the 630, this area was conquered by the Arabs, by the Caliph Umar after Muhammad. And the Arabs would control this area for about almost 400 years. Or actually about 450 years. But after that, the area was shortly reconquered by the Christians in the Crusades. We'll talk about that later. They held it for about 100 years before Arabs took it back. But the group that controlled it the longest were the Ottoman Turks, who would then take over this area around the year 1300 and control it until 1919. So you have one group of people that lived there for about, say, 1,800 plus years, and then you have another group of people that lived there for 1,400 years. So both groups have been here for a long time. Now, the other issue you have is religious-based, because the other two are land-based. The ancient Israelites settle it, they own it, they kicked out. Then the Muslims come in, they own it, and they're able to rule it. But now we add into the area of Jerusalem. The main city in Israel is Jerusalem. It's not the capital, that's Tel Aviv, if you wanted to know. And Jerusalem is holy to everybody. Of course, for Jews, it's the holiest spot in the world, that you have the West Wall, which is right here, which housed the Ark and is the holiest site in all of Judaism. It is the most important. It is sacred to them. It has been for thousands of years. For Muslims, if we look at the gold dome that I'm circling in the back, it is also very holy, because this is where Muhammad ascended into heaven. This is an important city because Judaism helped to create Islam, and so it's very, very important. The city is also, of course, important to Christians because this is where Jesus died. So now we have claims of who owns land. Then let's add in this religious aspect, and it's going to get intense. But now we're going to fast forward. So we kind of leave off in previous times. But so in the 1800s, the main group of people that were living here were the Palestinians. But a movement started in the 1800s known as Zionism. And the whole idea and the thrust behind Zionism was to get the Jews back to the Holy Land, and that a holy, or not a holy, if you will, but a homeland should be established for the Jews in what was Israel. And so what many Jews that had some money did is they started to buy land in Israel. And as you can see here, if you see these blue dots, and then even some of the black dots, but you see these blue dots, these are areas in which were Jewish settlements. They set up villages, they would buy land from a variety of different people, and they started to get a presence there throughout the 1800s. The Palestinians, of course, are the bulk of the people here, and many of them were not real hip to this, but early on, we don't really have much in the way of cases of violence or things along that line. But as you can see, by 1882, they would have about 260,000 people living there, and by 1920, it would be up to 600,000. So you slowly but surely are getting more people in it. Now, massive changes are going to happen after World War I. World War I, the Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman Turks, which controlled this area, were defeated. They were on the same side as the Germans. And the Austria-Hungarians. So the Turks get bounced. Yes, that's my 90s lingo. I'm old, deal. So the Turks get bounced out, and Britain is going to come to control this area. And that's going to be very, very important. You can see all the yellow area is what Britain controlled. So they got to basically determine what was going to happen here. And what they decided was something called the Balfour Declaration, and this is the biggest game changer. The British government, in discussing with a lot of groups of people, decided that they were going to work to try to establish a Jewish state in Palestine, which this area was being referred to as that point. And on the right, you see a short missive by Arthur Balfour, which kind of summed up the idea that the following declaration of sympathy, which was Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the cabinet. And they view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. So out loud, they're saying that they are going to work to establish this. The Arabs, on the other hand, aren't real fond of this, and you actually get some attacks on Jews. Some of their colonies or towns are attacked, and tensions are starting to slowly but surely rise here because of this. But this is the moment that I'm going to stop, and this is where we're at, because now you get the point in which the Jews are going to have an opportunity to perhaps get a country back, if you will. The question remains, however, is how the Arabic nations, which, by the way, will surround them, as I will show you a map in upcoming videos, is going to get it set up. All right, so make sure you have your notes and be ready for questions, and we're going to talk about a lot of stuff tomorrow. I'll see you then.